Welcome to Silence, where we explore the alchemy of disciplines, practices, and beliefs that get us to our best thinking, insights, and creativity. Now, onto the show. All right, Collins, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Thanks for coming in. I appreciate it. I appreciate your time. You're a great thinker, and that may be a little bit hard to define, but you give thought to things, you think it over before you answer, you pause, before answering, you're well-read, and yeah, I've just appreciated our conversation. So I'm glad you're here today.
Yeah. Well, you're kind to say that. I feel like you bring that out in people. So those are kind things to say, but you get to see a lot of that because you bring it out.
Thanks. I appreciate that. Well, let's start, just quick bio, however you want to answer that, but just to give everybody listening a little background on who you are.
Yeah. I live here in Atlanta. I'm married and have a couple kids, a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old, a daughter and a son. And so we're right in the middle of the family thing.
Yeah.
We've been in Atlanta for, 12, 13 years, something like that. Professionally, I work in wealth management. I practiced law for 11 years and recently moved over to the lighter side of things and have really enjoyed that and focus on state and tax planning. And so that's what I spend my days doing, but love thinking about these things about life and spirituality. And I was a philosophy major, and I just find this stuff interesting.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Maybe you told me that. Yeah. Okay. So now I'm understanding where some of this depth comes from.
Yeah.
Well, let's start, because this is how we'd start a normal conversation, I think, is, or often we do, of just like what's inspiring you these days. Anything you've read, seen, experiences. We were just talking about how you got out in nature with your family.
Yeah.
But whether it's the printed word or just being in nature, but where are you finding inspiration?
Yeah, for sure. Right now it's being outside. And part of that's the ages of our kids. We're able to do some more fun stuff outside. So our house backs up to some power lines, which has its pros and cons.
Yeah.
Maybe the cons are obvious, but the pro is that it's 7 acres of city property. It backs up to Peachtree Creek. And so we've been spending a lot of time out there with the kids, fishing and just letting them run free back there, which is awesome and not something that you get to do in the city a whole lot. And so that's been really fun. And we've done some camping trips. And I just find, I was thinking about this earlier today. Atlanta is not the easiest place to live, and there's some things about it that are challenging, but it is a green city, and I do find myself almost every day, whether it's like noticing the trees or just feeling like you're in the woods, even though you're in the city, like I do find myself on a daily basis noticing that, and it is like it's just like a little boost, like a little, fills me up just a little bit.
Gift.
Yeah.
That's true. And we have a great canopy.
We do.
Which I know they're working to protect. And now we have some great paths. So you're right. And I know we both lament a little bit of the big city life sometimes and the traffic, but there is a great nature element. I think the one thing Rachel and I always wish is we could see more of the sky. We love seeing the sky when you go, out west or other places. But
yes,
that's
absolutely
great. All right, so nature, source of inspiration.
Yeah.
What else?
Yeah. So earlier this year, I read this novel called Sun House.
Oh, I remember you telling me about that.
Yeah. And that really like, I think, shook me up some in some good ways. And it just opened me up to some, I wouldn't even say new ideas, like just new ways of seeing the world, of experiencing my life day to day in some ways that like just have had provided tremendous depth to my daily experience. I think it helped me feel like I could more quickly access the whatever's behind the stuff, the thing behind the stuff.
The thing behind the thing.
Yeah. Exactly. And gosh, I mean, I have so much noise in my life that creates chaos and confusion, and you always feel like you're reaching around in the dark. And this just was, I just feel like the characters in the book so embodied like just that kind of presence to reality that is, that it was, you don't often get to see that emulated in people. That's how I feel like I've learned, is you're like emulating people who you admire. It's a way to learn. And so to have book characters emulate that, I think was really helpful for me. And
so flesh out a little bit more, like what was the takeaway, or how did it change or open you?
Yeah. I think, I don't know, I mean, maybe it sounds trite, but I think to say, that it helped me, it's helping me see, love, I mean, whatever you want to call it, reality, God, in like my daily life, that it's like, that thing is like right next to me. And, I just need to be able to like turn my attention to it. And in order to do that, like I've got to have there's got to be some clarity, so like I spend a lot of my time when I sit down to meditate, a lot of that is just trying to like clear out the junk in the attic. One of the metaphors I think of a lot is just like getting all of the junk that I store up from being alive and, being a parent and working and all that stuff. It's like, it just piles up, and I just try to like clear it out, like, so that there's empty space. Yeah. And it seems to me more and more that it's in that like empty space where like I'm out of the way, that I can access stuff that's like deeper. That's the real thing. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. It's so vague to talk about, but
it is. It's hard to talk about, it's hard to put into words some of this, mystical stuff.
It is.
But I think there's certainly like a practical reality to what you're saying, and then I think spiritual. I mean, I think Mother Teresa saying like, God cannot fill what's already full, and I know I go through my days feeling like I'm always full. Yeah. And we were talking yesterday with another guest just about, we're both, we love podcasts. And so we're always plugged in, and especially I think with AirPods. I mean, even removing the wire, it's amazing now how many people are just always have those things in, including me.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I mean, and sometimes it's silent, there's just like dampening noise, but the title of the podcast is Silence, but I'm on this journey of trying to find more of it. Yeah. Too. Yeah. It's just, and then to your point, we're both in this busy season with kids and work and community, and there's just so much to like process. It's hard to get an empty mind.
It is.
And heart.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. No, I'm with you. I mean, if I don't know where my AirPods are, I'm uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
And it is like some stimulation, and I have been thinking about that lately, because you can generally think like it's good, it's good to listen to podcasts and whatever. Yeah. It gets you thinking about stuff, but more and more it's like that. We talked. I'm sure you do too. Like when the kids say I'm bored, we're always like, we're glad that you're bored. Like that's a good thing. But I need to be bored a little bit too, and so I've been trying to allow myself to do that with varying degrees of success.
Yeah. Well, like you said, the thing behind the thing, I'm like, what's the thing behind why I always need noise and stimulation? And I think there's a desire to learn and grow and be entertained, podcasts are obviously popular for a reason, but why do I have a hard time doing the transition to silence?
Yeah.
And, I've tried, we were talking about this again yesterday, but I try to, on the way home from work, be in silence.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes I'll forget and I'll just go right into the podcast I have on, but just at least to give me a little bit of a reset before I see my family.
Yeah.
And just to process the day a bit. I had a coach, kind of counselor type once. This I thought was kind of extreme, but he realized he needed more time on the way home to process the day before he saw his wife. And his commute was too short, so he actually moved to have a longer commute. Which in the moment I'm like, oh, wow, that's, but then I'm like, well, why don't you just take a longer way around?
Yeah, right,
but anyway,
right.
But, I applaud the dedication to, he really needed that processing time.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, I think often of this scene from the movie Saving Private Ryan. Remember that movie?
Yeah.
At the beginning when they're storming the beaches of Normandy and you're like right there with the camera and then they'll go underwater. So like all these bullets flying everywhere and stuff exploding. And you go underwater and like it gets quiet and like the bullets are still coming, but like they're coming through water and it's quiet. And then the camera goes back above water and it's just like total chaos. I mean, for me, it's those two dimensions and like the stark contrast between the two, that it can make it really hard to dip into being quiet because you're going to get jerked back out of it so quickly into just the noise of life. I mean, for me, that's like getting on Zoom call. It's like I can try to have a quiet morning, but and a lot of times I do, but by 10 o'clock, it's blown up. I'm like in full extrovert mode. Doing my job. And then it's hard to quiet back down. And then by the end of the afternoon, my willpower is shot, so it's hard to sit there and quiet yourself. It's hard to do it on the way home. For me, it is. And so you start all over again the next day and it's an effort, but it's that contrast that makes it difficult to really feel like you can sink into silence and it makes you admire the people who have chosen a life that is quieter. And it's not, that's not really a life that we've chosen, just like circumstantially. And so it's part of the job for me is figuring out ways to recreate that or get a taste of it where I can.
Yeah. Yeah. And to what you're saying, I've noticed if I can get some quiet, like my state of being there and my state of being during the workday is like vastly different.
Oh yeah.
And then it's like, is this healthy? Like when you get the appropriate amount of quiet and it kind of the gears click and you feel settled and you feel clear-minded and you're kind of more in tune, it's such a great place to be, of peace. And then you step into the day and it's just like the contrast, like you said, it's so extreme. It's not just like, oh, my day's going to get a little busier. It's like, oh no, I'm going from a state of peace to a state of chaos.
Yeah.
And it just, the gap feels really wide.
Yeah.
It's just like, is this okay?
Yeah, I know. And I think, we know each other well enough to know that both makes us question, sometimes like some of the choices that we're making.
Yeah.
I question that stuff all the time. I've been but I've been seeing a spiritual director for a couple of years now.
That's right.
Regularly. I'm going tonight actually.
Friday night.
Well, I'm committed. I'm driving to Decatur on a Friday night, so it better be good, huh? But one thing that he's helped me with is being able to find, even if it's not silence, at least find being able to be in touch with God in the middle of that, knowing that that's part of my life. And and God or love, it's right there. It's right there. I'm amped up, but that doesn't change the nature of reality. It just changes my experience of it. And so I try to keep that in mind, in some of these days where you have stacked meetings. That for me, is disorienting. I come out of that and I feel like I'm coming out of a fog. But I will often stop and think okay, I'm okay. I just need to calm down a little bit and I'll be okay and I can find the thing. But it is harder to do. It's harder to do when, for me, and I know we have extroverted friends where that's where they feel alive, right? Where they a day full of meetings is like a day of joy and celebration. I enjoy it, but it wipes me out, to do that. And so got to be able to recharge.
And going back to your characters, is that what you got from them, of just that attunement to reality?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just staying connected to that, knowing, I grew up playing basketball, and when you're on defense and playing basketball, you always have to know where the guy you're guarding is, right? Yeah. You have to know where the ball is, and you have to know where the guy you're guarding is. So it's that orientation where I want to always kind of know where's my center, where's the middle that I can retreat back to. Mm-hmm. And when I lose that, which I do often, when I lose that sense of where that is, I feel rudderless, or I feel like I'm just out in the middle of the ocean with no orientation. And so to stay connected to that is, maybe that's the vine and the branches thing. Maybe that's kind of that, similar idea. But that was the takeaway from that book for me.
Yeah, I resonate with that feeling of the rudderlessness. I actually had it last night going home, and there was a couple things that happened, not big deals, but I just got stuck on them, and it was really disorienting to me.
Yeah.
And some of this is being in touch with my emotions, how I'm feeling about something. But and I got past it, but yeah, you got to stop and pause and gather yourself, and then I guess recenter yourself.
Yeah, and then something else. Something else will take its place for me. So I start to think well, if if I feel directionless or something, then maybe it's maybe we should find a new place to live, or maybe I need to
it's external things.
Exactly. And that never has, I don't know, maybe there's some value in that, but I'm trying to spend more time thinking about how do I flourish where I am, bloom where I'm planted, and that seems to have more utility than daydreaming about.
Yeah, it seems like the right path, but not the easier one.
No, it's not.
Well, let's shift a little bit of, certainly they're connected, but thinking creativity. Like I said at the beginning, you're the super thoughtful person. What are the ingredients to get you to your best thinking, or to get you to a creative spot?
Yeah.
Practices, or just, hey, I've noticed this trend line, or, how do you get there?
Yeah.
And how do you know you're there?
Yeah. More concretely, a lot of my work involves creativity. You wouldn't expect that, I guess, thinking about doing tax planning, but it does. And so, again, more concretely, when I've got something thorny that I've got to figure out, it's just it's shutting the door, shutting off my computer, sitting down with a pad and paper, and drawing it out, and being able to block out noise and think deeply for an extended period of time. That usually will get it done.
Yeah.
Personally, and for me, creativity outside of work, I think mostly involves my spiritual life. And I feel I'm really open to new experiences or thoughts, or I like that. I like writing that stuff down. Mm-hmm. So for me, and I'm not sure I would advise this for anyone, because you wind up going down some unhelpful paths sometimes. But it's just exploring what is interesting to me, like just trying to pay attention to what's the thing that's like beeping on my radar, flashing on my radar, that I can't stop thinking about, or that just like when I go to bed at night is tugging on me, or or if what's the thing when I'm reading it, like lights me up, it's like that I should pay attention to that, because that was really interesting to me, and the rest of this was not that interesting. And so just following the threads on that, I think leads to new ideas, and some good ideas and some bad stuff. And I think about this a lot. I used to, growing up, I played this video game where you had, maybe I've told you this before, but you started out with, you had this like blank map, and you had like just a few squares you could see that was like a map of this big area. And you had an explorer and a settler, and you wanted to figure out where to build a city. So you had turns, and you'd like move around, and you'd see like, okay, well, this is the ocean, and these are big mountains, and this is like a river with really good land. And like, you just kind of figure out the territory by exploring it. And you could say like, yeah, I want to, like, this seems like a good spot. I want to build a city here. Or no, this doesn't seem like good territory for that. And it's kind of a silly example, but I mean, that's kind of how I have thought about my inner life, explore these little paths, and sometimes they're really good. And like, I'll try to really incorporate that into who I am and how I understand myself in the world. And then sometimes you go down these paths and you're like, that didn't serve me, or it wasn't the right time for me to explore that. And I spent 6 weeks like reading a few books about this thing and learning all about it, and it actually wasn't that helpful. And that is, I mean, again, I don't know that I'd advise that strategy to anybody, but it's how I operate, and it's how I find new and interesting and exciting things to me.
Yeah. I mean, talk about creativity, that we have, that the human experience allows for that I think we agree, like faith allows for that, mm-hmm. that, it's not, I mean, there's some prescriptive parts, I guess, but that I think as you get older, you realize, hey, there's freedom to, and I think with anything you're learning, there's got to be some freedom to explore, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise I don't know, it doesn't seem like true learning. Like you've got to fail too, or you've got to hit dead ends, or you've got to go down that path and be like, yeah, it wasn't as great or productive as I thought.
Yeah. And like, and try to figure out what works, like what's actually changing me, what's actually moving me. And sometimes, I mean, I've had this, it. I mean, I've had times where like, you just feel like the rug's pulled out from under you. Yeah. And like what was there before that felt like a really solid foundation is just gone.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, you can kind of like sit there or try to cling to the old stuff, or you can go figure out like, now I'm on a journey, now I'm.
Well, it's like, that's why it's called faith.
Yeah.
Not certainty.
Yeah.
You're figuring this stuff out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You said something that made me think. It'll come back to me, but I deeply resonate. I love following those threads, and I feel more freedom too, in any part of life these days. Of like, I'd like to learn about that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I had the worldview largely of my parents and influences when I was young, and that was great. I mean, there was, parts that I think I take a different perspective on now, but it served me for a while. But then as you get older, it's like, okay, I'm ready to expand that and check out some other stuff and, just broaden my field of view. Yeah. And it enriches life.
Yeah.
But it is funny that, you're like, gosh, some of it feels like a waste of time, but I don't think it is. I think like in a story, you've got to have ups and downs and twists and turns and dead ends, for a good one.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I mean, it's not all, sometimes it's 2 steps forward and 1 step back. And, but that's right. I mean, I don't know. I guess it's kind of a cliche, but like, it's the exploring that is the fun part to me.
Yeah.
It's not the like reaching a conclusion or, I don't like aim to sit down and like write out, here are all the things that I think are true.
Yeah.
Or that I like, that I want to establish that. It's more like, what's the like, if I'm going to be swimming in a river, what do I want that river to be? And what's the direction I'm headed in? And it's a lot more, for me, again, it's much more fluid than, I am X, Y, and Z, and, I'll sign my name beside whatever thing I believe. It's
Well, I hear you saying openness. Like openness is a key ingredient to ongoing learning and development.
Yeah.
And a rich life, I think.
Yeah.
And for some people, that's a scary word. We were talking yesterday about holding these things in tension where as you get older, you do have more opinions about things. You're like, okay, I've been around the merry-go-round a few times. I have a sense of like what works, what doesn't. But some people like solidify and stop there. Like, I know what works now. I'm signing my name to it. Done.
Yeah.
And then other people can say, I do have an opinion. Like, I'm standing on the rock in the river, but I'm open to hop another rock. Like, I have an open posture toward learning and toward other perspectives, whether I agree with them or not, but I want to hear them and then, integrate some things and keep growing, And so if there's a belief or practice or whatever that challenges mine, how can I learn and grow from that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd say too, as I've gotten older, I have much less, much fewer like strongly held beliefs.
Absolutes.
About anything. But I do feel like I'm experiencing the thing, whatever we want to call it, God. Like I feel closer to the source of that thing than I did 15 years ago when I would have had like a lot more answers about what that means or like what life would ask from me,
Yeah. Well, and part of that journey that I was alluding to is this shift from being authored from the outside in to self-authored. And I think you're actually one of my friends that I feel like you came to a place of self-authoring earlier, I remember even years back in a relationship, you saying like, it's not that you weren't open to hearing what other people said, but if somebody disagreed, whatever, it's like, it didn't bother you. You were kind of on your journey. And
yeah, but I mean, it's just, I didn't choose it, it's like I said, it just felt like the foundation that my house was built on crumbled. Somebody told me a story of one of their families and family members that lived in Nashville. They were fortunately gone, but they came home and like the water, the floods had pushed the house off of the foundation. So like the house was 100 yards down the hill, like from the I'm sure there are plenty of stories of that, but it's kind of like that, it's like, okay, well, I don't know. I can't like get back to that. There's no going backwards.
Yeah.
And so like it's time to, strap on my boots and start exploring.
Yeah.
Which was unpleasant. I mean, not,
well, say a minute about that. Yeah. What was unpleasant? Just feeling so discombobulated.
Yeah. Disoriented. Not feeling like there was anybody to lead me in that, which is part of being an adult, I think, that like you have to start figuring stuff out for yourself. And then I think to your point, it just happened early for me. And, so I didn't have a lot of friends that were going through that, and everybody and faith and spirituality were like a huge part of my identity. It's like it was who I was. And for that to be gone all of a sudden with no like external event happening to cause that, just like it just stopped working. It's just stopped clicking.
Your paradigm.
Yeah,
like
my paradigm.
Framework,
it just like, I wouldn't even say it like slowly eroded, just like over a period of months, maybe it just kind of like was gone. And there was nobody around me then to say like, yeah, I resonate with that. And like, let's figure it out together. I mean, maybe one or two friends and you and a couple others you just are a great listener and ask great questions and want to understand. And maybe you were having similar experiences too on some level, but yeah, just lonely and disorienting, and I think made me really angry for a long time. That's been part of my journey the last few years, is like just trying to get less angry about the whole thing and be at peace with who I am and where I am, and letting people do their thing and not feeling like I got to go in and fight some battle or something. Just, be comfortable with who and where I am.
What ties into something else that I'd like to ask about is like, where are you taking risk in your thinking? Because I feel like there's like not enough out there. Mm-hmm. And we were talking the other day, like, is that somewhat a factor of the internet? Which, it's interesting because people will make cases that, no, the internet's this great platform for expressive freedom and independent thought and everybody can whatever. But I think there's also a case to be made of like, it's like, there's like mass conformity, and I don't even mean cancel culture, though there is that, but just like you see what someone else is doing and then you get closer to that and everybody's being brought down to a common denominator, which feels a little bit like social media, right? But yeah. But regardless, and even outside internet, but like having these people that really, I'm trying not to use the cliche, but think different. These kind of iconoclastic folks out there that, like, I use the astronauts as an example. Now that's not necessarily thinking, but just like pioneers, like taking great risk. Yeah. And it doesn't, I mean, the guest yesterday was making the point of like, well, we've got like great polarization going on. I'm like, well, that's true. There are different camps seeing things differently, but are there a lot of camps in between? Mm-hmm. Or is it actually, there's just kind of a couple, but you were somebody that I saw take risk in your thinking, like I said early on. Mm-hmm. And you're one of my friends that takes the most risk, I think, in your thinking and journey, and when we're together, I love asking. I just want to like get a beat on like, where are you right now? Where's your mind at? Like, what are you thinking about? And what's been challenging? Because you're not afraid to take those risks or to have inputs that challenge you. And it sounds like you almost started part of this journey and you didn't have the option because it was torn out from under you. But then, like you went off on the journey. I'm sorry, I'm thinking about like Lord of the Rings here.
I know, yeah.
Like Bilbo, Gandalf saying, do it. And he's like, no, like the comfort of home. And I think the story hits on something deep of like, we all like the comfort of home or of our tribe or of our friends or of our paradigm of life. But you're somebody that I feel like always wanders out the door and finds something else.
Yeah. and I mean, I do feel like Bilbo or Frodo in that, like, I feel incredibly unremarkable. It's not like I haven't done it to then go like tell other people about it or I don't know, because I'm like some whiz or something. I don't feel at all. I feel like many of my friends, if they had the interests that I had, would probably know and understand the things I've explored better. And so I do feel, I don't feel like I feel like a hobbit in that sense.
Well, something that strikes me too, though, is your motives seem pure, and I know nobody's motives are totally pure at any time, though I'm not sure what the counter motive would be. But a lot of people who are thinking different are doing so because they want a platform, they want to sell you something, they want to be an activist or an influencer, or there's something behind it. But you just alluded to it, of like, you're kind of doing it quietly. Like, you don't broadcast it, you don't shove it down anybody's throat. You kind of have to pry it out of you, when I'm with you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's hard to talk about, as evidenced by this podcast.
Well, I think there's a beauty to that. I've been thinking about incentives a lot in life, particularly in the space I'm in of media and content, and certainly around the election, people are sending you things, and you're like, well, what's the incentive behind that person saying that?
Yeah.
And again, are they trying to sell a book or build their podcast platform? Or do they deeply believe this? Or incentives, in the business environment, whatever. But yeah, it seems like great exploration and thinking. Not that it couldn't have incentives, but I love the purity from which you go about it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm inherently skeptical of groupthink. And so I think that helps me keep a kind of a distance from some of the internet stuff.
Yeah.
So I feel like I can approach it and get what I can from it, and then walk away. I do love that. Like, I mean, I don't know that I would have been able to go on the journey that I've been on in my inner life if I were my dad's age. And actually, my dad's is
because
on a
of the
similar
era
journey.
he grew up in,
Yeah.
or because it's harder, you think, as you get older.
I've just, I mean, you talk about podcasts or
Right.
The internet helps you find people
Yeah.
who have like little niche views on the world.
Yeah.
And it allows you to run down that path a little bit and check out what's there and see what you like. And I love that. I mean, that's like, and I think you do too. I mean, that's just one of my like favorite things to do in life.
Finding gems in a field.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, it's so fun. And sometimes you go down the path and you say like, this is wacky stuff,
Back up, reverse.
Yeah. But then you do find really good stuff, and you're glad that someone has taken the risk to put themselves out there, because it is a risk. And so I'm grateful for those people who have written books and done it, especially when they're able to, keep some authenticity and not, where you don't feel like they're selling you something or trying to make it big or whatever. Whatever has its place. But
so how do you avoid groupthink, or how do you? I mean, I want to say, like, how do you have the confidence to not fall into it? But like, what is that mechanism in you where I think like more people than not are probably susceptible to it. Certainly, there's some that aren't. You're in that. How do you? But that's like an important principle. Like, how do you? Is there a mechanism? Is it just an internal thing? Is it part of your wiring? I can't remember what you are in the Enneagram, but it's like, that seems somewhat rare.
Yeah, I think it's probably a lot of my makeup.
Yeah.
Because
hold on. Yeah. Because you are also like a good friend. You're sociable. You're not like, oh, Collins, he's a jerk and he's like holed up in his house and never comes out. You're not I don't know what the right word for that. Like, you have tons of friends you get along with, so you're very socially adept, and yet you're not afraid to walk away from groupthink.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and so, yeah, so makeup probably partly, and I'm a 5 on the Enneagram. I mean, I just love like exploring and thinking and going deep. I don't love conflict, but I do like contrarian thinking. So like I can keep it to myself. I don't need to argue with people. And I've got it up in my office. Wendell Berry's Mad Farmer Liberation Front is one of my very favorite poems, and it's all about being a contrarian, but doing it quietly and I mean, yeah, he starts out by saying, as soon as the world knows how you're going to think, you'll have a hole in your head, and they'll tell you exactly what to do, and that is terrifying to me. That kind of feeling of that I wouldn't have my independence, and so maybe that's part of it, is this deep desire to maintain, control or independence.
Yeah, I'm laughing because it's like, well, one, my business is somewhat of influence, but then I think about like AI, and I have this sense of like the walls are closing in, not because the robot army is going to storm tomorrow. That probably is a ways off, but that as it gets integrated into all these software systems, it's just like predictive and controlling and watching and, starting to build boxes or boundaries, not with evil intent, but that it could end up there.
Yeah.
It's probably for optimization and service. I was reading this article yesterday about this nurse who was raising the warning flag on their hospital had implemented this big AI system. And it was like the noose tightening around the neck. Like it was done under the auspices of good patient care, but it's like the devil's in the details. All these little things he felt like were going to prevent him from being able to do his job properly. So anyway, tangent there.
That's it is kind of scary stuff, and I don't know. I feel like the more that the faster that stuff grows, the faster I'm trying to become more analog.
You're out of here.
Just hit eject probably.
Going to Montana. That's like the nirvana.
Yeah.
We've talked around it. I mean, are there any? This may be a dangerous question to ask, but are there any interesting kind of leading edge parts of your thinking now where you're like, I'm really wrestling with or thinking about this and it feels dangerous, or I'm not sure, or not that this is a great example, but I was listening to some books and podcasts on quantum physics the other day. It was like thinking about like, how does that relate to faith and but I don't know, are there any areas like that for you of, this is a new idea to me, or here's something new I haven't thought about in life? Or, I mean, I think what you said earlier about just recognizing almost presence, like it's like so close, it's just you, how you're experiencing it. That feels like a great one, but are there any others?
Yeah. Not like that right now. I mean, I feel like I often have some quirky little thing like what you just mentioned that is that I'm running down. But to me, the risky things feel right now like the kind of what I was saying before, like the taking the risk that the mystical and like the thing that I'm after, the shiny ball, the thing we're all chasing is actually in like the ordinary everyday stuff. And that to me feels like a massive risk.
Yeah.
It feels terrifying to think that it's not out there. And like, if only I can figure out like how quantum physics relates to my faith and like combine the two, then I'll like
I've solved the mystery.
Yeah. Like it is, you know, like, okay, how can I, you know, we live in the middle of this big city. I have a relatively demanding job. I'm raising 2 kids. Like, can I stay in touch with the mystery in the middle of all that and again, and not eject and not go like join a monastery or move to Montana, but like, can we stay in the middle of all this and find real peace and joy and meaning and the good life? And that is an open, I mean, I would say that's an open question. And it feels like a big risk to double down on that and say, let's prioritize going to like the school function last night, even though it's hard to do. And, you know, if we had trouble finding a babysitter, let's go do that and invest in that group, you know, rather than thinking about how to withdraw more. So I don't know. I don't think that's what you were asking, but that's what comes to mind when I feel like thinking about taking risk right now.
I think that's great. You know, we have this friend in our life that encourages, like, you grow in the tension.
Mm-hmm.
And I know as I've sat with them, you know, and pondered some of these kind of things, or about work back before I started my current deal, but you know, all of our inclination is to often look to the external, to the escape, you know, valve. Yep. And I think that it's probably that never solves it. I don't know if never is the right word, but it does seem just like what you're saying of, it's about growing in the tension and kind of learning to thrive, bloom where you're at, where you're planted.
Yeah.
Not that the external can't ever change, but if you're looking for external fixes, I mean, I'm sure there's some exceptions here, but often that's not what needs to change. It's something inside yourself.
Yeah, I mean, what's the saying? Like, wherever you live, there you are. I mean, like, my stuff is going to go with me wherever I am.
Right.
And I think it's those things. You know, we started off talking about like, you know, how do you find silence in the middle of all that? So I mean, that's part of the challenge too. That's part of the tension is keeping that alive. But I don't know. People for millennia have been able to, in different circumstances, experience a really rich inner life. And the only thread I see that connects all of those people is just a commitment to it, regardless of the circumstances that they're in.
Well, gosh, you think about Viktor Frankl.
Yeah.
And there's somebody else I was reading about the other day, but in the camps and, you know, and finding the ability to have purpose and meaning and depth and peace and
that's the perfect example.
Yeah. All right, we're going to take another right turn here, or a little bit. But so when you think about thinking, and I have this idea of elevated thinking, not defined, but what does better thinking mean to you? And I'm thinking about culture, humanity, where we're at, where we're going. How would you define better thinking or elevated thinking? Does it have hallmarks? I know I asked about some of your practices to get there.
Yeah.
But are there traits or attributes or you know, trend lines? You're like, to me, this represents a better iteration, the evolution, however you want to.
Yeah. I think thinking that can see both sides of things understand like you see it in our political environment right now.
Yeah.
Right. So I feel like I'm trying to do that right now. And I admire people who can say, I'm disgusted with the other side, whatever position they're on, if they feel strongly about that. But I can still see what's going on, you know, and then there's something real there. And that I think that applies in both directions. And that could be anything. I mean, you can take do that with faith. You know, I see where I am, and I stick with my tribe. But like, I see this other stuff that's out there, and I can understand why that's appealing to somebody. So I just think I find tribalism to be a really dangerous thing. I love it. I mean, I love being at a college football game where like we're all there doing the same thing and cheering for the same group. And I mean, there is a real power to it.
Yeah.
And so it's not pretend, you know. I think it's got real effect that is kind of mysterious, but then it's dangerous, I think, when we start applying that to things beyond that are serious.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that are life and death.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's around the election, or then, you know, post, or just around that day and the weeks, whatever. But you know, I was trying to consume some from like both sides of the media. Not that the media is the ultimate arbiter, but to just gain some empathy on, what is this side thinking? Why do they think this? What's the other side thinking? Why do they think this? And I don't know that that's the best way to do it, but I thought, well, it's a place to start. Because honestly, I've got friends on both sides of this thing,
sure.
And there's valid arguments and fears and concerns on both sides. And when either side, when I kind of read thoughtful stuff about it, you're like, okay, whether I agree or don't agree, I understand your point of view. And if you held that point of view, I'd feel the same way.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's right. I mean, for sure. Friends on both sides of the equation who really don't see the world that differently, you know, but you're forced between these like two polar opposites.
That's right.
You know, I've been thinking about this. Like, I mean, it's just kind of like if you were watching we are kind of watching a reality show, but like if you were watching
it's the truth.
The Bachelor, you know, it's down to like two people. Are you going to be like Team A or Team B? And like people take different sides, and it's kind of polarizing. It feels more like that. It doesn't feel like it's qualitative about the nature of people who choose a side.
Yeah.
I've been thinking a lot about what's the right amount of news to consume. Like,
tell me the answer, because
I don't know.
I have a problem.
Yeah, I don't know, but I don't think the world is becoming a better place by me reading more news. And I like it, you know, I like to know what's going on, and it is kind of like a reality show, and it's interesting, but I don't know that it's adding value. I know it's not adding value to my life. I also don't think it's adding value to like the way that I move about in the world. Because a lot of times it's upsetting, and it's upsetting to people on both sides. And so there are serious things that are happening in the world that I do think matter. I don't know how much I can do about that, but yeah, I'm trying really hard not to wake up and read the news in the morning first thing. That's a temptation, you know, lay in bed and like just quickly scroll through what's going on, and I've been trying hard to nix that one.
Yeah,
I don't know. What do you think about that? Like.
Yeah, I mean, there's part of my life and business that's, you know, kind of deep into this. And so for years, up until recently, I just consumed so much news. Mm-hmm. Apple News was the death of me, because you just scroll and scroll and scroll. And, you know, I'm not really on social media. And so you know, the hypocrisy, like I would somewhat judge people who are addicted to social media, and yet I'm addicted to my news app. It's the same thing. Yeah. And really it's the dopamine hits, right? Like I'm just getting it from reading about outrageous news and thinking I'm better because it's news and not Instagram, but I'm no better. And so anyway, we consumed so much, and then maybe it was this summer, sometime when the election cycle started heating up, I thought, I have to stop. This is not producing good things in my spirit. And so I raised Apple News and I stopped. And I mean, it's part of my business, so I get some summaries from my team, and then I get one major newspaper kind of top 10 stories of the day. And that's really it. Now, lately I've like gone to look at Twitter trending things. Yeah, I'm like falling back in a little bit, but I'm trying to stay out. And I agree. There's so much of it that harms me.
Yeah.
Harms the delicate parts of me. And yeah, I mean, I think reading about some stuff's interesting and fine, whether it's sports or science or whatever, but so much of it, I mean, even sports for some people, but I mean, you take any topic and it can start to, it's like a little dose of poison.
Yeah. I mean, when I'm at my best, I think I am going in, anytime I'm opening my phone or my laptop, I am going in with my guard up, knowing like this
system's trying to trap me.
This machine wants to grab my attention for as long as it can have it. And I know that I don't want to give my attention to that. There's other stuff that I want to give my attention to, but man, it's juicy. And
it is. It is.
I'm not good at it. I hope to get better at it. I don't think I'm great at it, but it's, and Cassidy, my wife is awesome at, I mean, she could kind of take it or leave it on a lot of that stuff.
That surprises me. You got a great wife.
And so I've got stuff to learn from her, but I just feel like there's not much. I'm with you a little bit for work. Like I need to generally know what's going on and
the big trends.
Yeah, and then some like more micro stuff that. But yeah, I don't need, whatever the story du jour is, like, doesn't matter if I know about how that has played out.
Yeah, it's really, at that point, it's entertainment.
It is.
Who was it who said, like, we're going to entertain ourselves to death?
Yeah, that's right.
I think it was a prediction a while back. And there was something else I heard the other day that I think related more to data or information, but same theme of like, it's just going to consume us.
Yeah.
And our attention.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Neil Postman, amusing ourselves to death.
Yeah. Other things for better thinking.
Yeah.
Anything else that comes to mind, or critical thinking and decision making?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to me, it's clarity, so like knowing that like we have biases, we have things that influence our decision making, and trying to identify those. I mean, we can't eliminate them. You can't get rid of bias.
Right.
But you can identify what is creating bias and try to hedge against that a little bit. In my work, a lot of it is around listening to clients. So like I have ideas about how I think things ought to go or what's going to be effective. But it matters. I mean, again, it kind of sounds cliche, but I genuinely think it matters to like stop and listen and really try to see what is this person really saying. And I think it applies outside of work too. Somebody has a thing that they're passionate about or that they're outraged about or they really want you to know about. And to be able to stop and say, what's behind that? And can I hear what they really are trying to say? Not just the thing the words that they're saying, but the underlying message and listen and respond accordingly. I think that leads to some really good thinking if we can hear what's going on around us.
Yeah. Well, let's stop there for a second because that really hit me. And I thought about my kids. maybe because they're not as great at communicators, though I feel like often when I'm communicating with them, I'm at a loss for words, especially if it's like a heated moment.
Totally.
But to your point about like what's behind this, I think this is actually a huge principle because, I mean, like we talked about, it could be incentives, but at least with the kids, it's like, what emotion's behind this? If you're so mad about this, are you really afraid?
Yeah.
What are you afraid about? Can I speak to that secondary, like what's behind the thing?
Yep.
I think that's how I really address this,
and
heal it. And if I react to your anger, which this is probably the easiest scenario, right? Somebody's angry, they're really scared or hurt, I think typically. Can I speak to the scared or hurt rather than just engaging in the anger? Because that's just an ego mess.
Yeah.
My ego versus their ego.
Yeah. Or like maybe they're hungry. I mean, it's like, I mean,
Could be
I don't
physical.
mean to be silly about it, but like, but yeah, kids are the perfect example because it's a lot simpler. It's not so complex. But I think that's the perfect example. And so your kid is screaming at you about wanting to do whatever, and you're the worst parent ever for not letting him do that. And so I think everybody kind of understands that, right? Like pausing and trying to understand, okay, my 9-year-old is this is not who she really is. Something else is going on. But the same thing's true with adults. And, you might interact with somebody at work or a client or whatever, a friend, and you get these negative emotions or extreme emotions that come out, and it's easy to think, well, this is an adult and they're in charge of their emotions. And so the thing that we're talking about is the real thing that's happening. But I do think so often there's something else at play. And that person is often not aware of what it is. I know I was in a funk earlier this week, and, Cassidy's asking me what's the funk about? And I don't know. If I knew, I'd get out of it.
Right. Yeah.
And then even more, even trickier than that, I think, is when we come up against someone else's trauma from earlier in life, and we get an extreme reaction from that. And that's not as simple as like coming out of a funk, right? I mean, those can be hard things to deal with. And so I think, extending grace matters, trying to think the best about people helps me stay above the fray a little bit on that and not get so consumed by it. And then it makes me want to take seriously my own like mental health and think about self-care, think about finding equanimity in my life so that my junk isn't getting all over people. And going back to what we were talking about before, in this period of my life, which was a long period where I felt lost, I felt like I was dragging along behind me like a dead appendage. Like I'd lost my arm, but I had to take it with me, and it stunk. And like everybody around me could smell the odor, But it didn't have anything to do with them. It was like my own dissatisfaction that I couldn't find any peace,
It's like The Mission. You've seen that.
Yes.
He's dragging
a
suit of armor behind him. Yeah. I guess that was more penance, but
yeah.
Well, I think you're good at this. I mean, you're one of the more compassionate and empathetic people I know. We were talking about recently, like especially even the election. It's like essentially all the people who really fired up, maybe I shouldn't make a generalization. It seems like most of it's driven by fear. They're afraid something's going to happen, a change of their life, a change of framework. What I knew it's going to change, or what I want's not going to happen, or whatever. And so, even if that's not everybody, but to be able to speak to that, like, oh gosh, I see your concern and fear.
Yeah.
Like I can, that's like a place I can connect.
Yeah.
With a soft heart.
Yeah, for sure.
Versus you yelling at me about whatever, but that's being driven by something that's really troubling inside of you.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the trick for me is like being compassionate about that.
Yeah.
You know? Sometimes I think I have an easier time seeing it, but then I have a tendency to then think like, well, you're dumb to be afraid of that. Like, you know, like that is not something you need to be worried about.
Right.
And of course, I've got my own fears, you know, that other people are not afraid of.
That would, at least for me, they'd be like, that's dumb, Rob. Why are you afraid of that?
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, exactly. And so, and listen, I mean, I don't mean to say that there are not things to be afraid of in the political world.
That's right.
But yeah, I think to have better thinking and to have clarity around interactions, you know, relationships, like what's going on here, so that I don't get bogged down. You know, when I have one of those where I get sucked in to someone else's emotion around a topic, and sometimes I agree and sometimes I disagree, you know, but like I get caught up in other people's emotion around it, that can stay with me for days, you know, and they're in my head and I'm arguing with them, you know, about whatever
right.
the thing is, my little interlocutor. And so I think to be able to step back and say that person is right or wrong. I mean, we can still like have the argument, and I do think some of that produces good thinking, figuring out those arguments with your inner self can be really helpful. But trying to take the emotion out of that by neutralizing the force of the other person's emotion by understanding where they're coming from can be helpful. I'm a strong believer that like I, at least, and I think a lot of people I'm around, have way too much left brain activity going on and not near enough right brain activity going on.
Left and analytical,
yeah,
right's creative.
Yeah. And so I mean, I'm not at all trying to say like we got to take we just need to have rational conversations, because I'm a little cynical about like our ability to actually be rational, but to be able to see clearly, I think can then produce, if we're talking about elevated thinking, you know, I think clarity about what's going on in relationships can produce some good thinking and healthy relationships.
Yeah. So then, tying some of this together, what place does reflection or silence have for better thinking, elevated thinking?
I mean, I think it's essential. Like just I don't know, maybe it's possible without that, but I find myself every few days. I mean, I'm pretty good about setting aside some time just to like meditate, pray, read, reflect in the morning. But if I go a few days without it, I mean, I'm totally disoriented, and I'm completely reacting out of whatever emotion I happen to be caught up in that day, and I quickly lose sight of the center of the you know, my true self. Maybe that's to take a Thomas Merton idea. You know, I want to bring my true self to every interaction, and I think silence, reflection. I don't know. I don't love the word reflection as much, I guess, but because to me, I'm trying to empty. Like I said at the beginning, like I'm trying to empty that stuff. Yeah. Like the analysis. That's what I'm saying about the left brain thing. Like it's the analysis that overwhelms me and gets me lost.
Good point.
So I'm trying to like flush that stuff out, so that what then fills up is my true self, or is, you know, is the good thing that's inside of me.
Yeah. Great point.
Yeah.
And I know we only have a few more minutes, so I'm sensitive to the time. But how about transcendent values? I've been thinking about this lately. Of the thought being like, gosh, is this whole deal about me just learning to live into transcendent values, which are often counter to maybe what I want to do from a culture or worldly perspective. So, forgiveness, generosity, truth, courage, wisdom, thinking about others before self, courage, those kind of things. It's like, can I use that lens to think about in my day, I want to just be leaning into those almost to like build up this invisible, I don't know what the right analogy is, but it's like, that helps better the world or at least my life. Yeah. If I can just put more of that out there, I guess. So rather than leaning into fear, hate, greed, whatever those things are, to just more and more live out the good ones.
Yeah.
But are there some that you feel like in this season of life, like, yeah, I'm really working on this, or it's front and center, or I'm really experiencing this one above the rest?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's a good question. And I like the word transcendent. I think that's a good word. I mean, the absolutes, like kind of gives me the willies a little bit. And I get it that works for some people. I've had different experience with that kind of idea. I'd go back to, though, like that stuff seems to come out more when I am present to my true self, or present to reality, or I am in communion with God. I mean, however you want to describe that, like whatever the thing is that works for you, then that stuff just kind of comes out. Like I have a bigger buffer or more margin between the pain and noise of the outside world and my reaction to that. So like when I'm tired and distracted and unfocused, that margin is razor thin. And anything that like comes in to poke at me, like I'm reacting. Yeah. It's hit the core and interrupted that that sense of peace. And so you're going to get a strong reaction from me. But when I've got a buffer, then I can start to think about those things. And but to me it all comes back to that. And then I think hopefully for most, if not all of us, that's what comes out when you're there. What comes out is compassion and kindness and love but I think it's a living thing. I mean, my relationship to, say, courage is different at 40 than it was at 25.
Yeah.
And so what does it mean to be courageous? And which I think is that's a good one that you mentioned. And then we've been, my son is doing Scouts right now. So they have all these little, to be a Scout is to be all these things that are like, it's been good for me because I can be kind of cynical about the stuff. I mean, it's been good to go like, these are good. It's good to be friendly, or like, it's good to be frugal, and like, there's some nuance to that. But when you're 6, like, that's a great thing to learn. It's good to be frugal.
It's good start. Stepping stone.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, it makes me think about when you were saying the buffer of like, makes me more solid. I thought about like the Great Divorce where he's walking on the grass, which I'm maybe mixing the metaphors a bit, but just this idea of like, I'm becoming more solid and then I can withstand things.
Yeah. That's Viktor Frankl too, right? I mean, that when he talks about meaning, but when we know who we are and what we're connected to and we understand where we fit in the world, then it's a lot easier to react with kindness and give people grace and work to like build bridges and find resolution and not just fire off a angry response.
Yeah. Have you ever read, I think it's Sacred Fire,
Yeah.
Rollheiser,
Mm-hmm.
but I hope I'm not messing this up. I think he talks about transforming versus transmitting.
Mm-hmm.
And like things come into you.
Yeah.
Let's say it's somebody who was really rude to you. And I can either transmit that rudeness, right?
Yeah.
Either back at them or to somebody else, or I can transform it and then make it something.
Yeah. Or maybe even,
healthier.
I think it's maybe even a little bit scarier than that, which is anything that you don't transform, you then transmit.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
That like if you don't do the work of transforming these inputs that come in, then you will I mean, that's like my stinky dead arm analogy metaphor, that I hadn't dealt with it, and I was trying to deal with it, but I hadn't yet.
Yeah.
You inevitably will transmit it. It comes out sideways. Sometimes it comes out directly, but a lot of times for me, it comes out sideways. I'm having a conversation with Cassidy about one thing, and then like from way over here comes the left hook, that like she's blindsided by. Like, where did that come from?
Yeah.
And it's because like I was angry with a colleague from earlier in the day, or because like, or because I have unresolved childhood trauma. I mean, like who knows what it's from?
Yep.
And I just think we've got a duty to deal with our stuff. We have a duty to our close friends and family and to the world. And if we spent the time and energy, maybe that's like the good takeaway is like, if we spent the time and energy we spend on the news on like healing ourselves, the world would be a lot better place. Yeah.
Yeah. And to our coworkers.
Yeah.
I've noticed this. I'll speak more from when I was a member of a team or, a staff member rather than the boss. But, you could feel things in coworkers of like, you could feel unresolved something.
Yeah.
I don't, trauma. Maybe it was from yesterday or maybe it was from childhood or whatever. And hey, I'm at the top of the list of my share of stuff. And if I'm not dealing with that environment, actually, they can't say much.
Yeah, I know.
I certainly can't as a boss, and I have a wonderful team, but everybody's got stuff. And whereas at least your family or kids can tell you.
Yeah.
But in the workplace setting, it's hard.
It's
and it really affects things. And so anyway, to your point, but obviously affects your family and friends a lot too. So I'm with you of like, I think that was a big pivot middle of my life of I know a lot of head knowledge. I need to do a lot of internal exploration and transformation and healing and those things to make that real, that I could live out these things I say.
Yeah.
I want to live it.
Yep.
So
it's been massively helpful for me. Therapy's been massively helpful. Spiritual direction, I know it has been for a lot of our friends.
Yeah.
And I just, it will continue to be. I mean, it's an ongoing thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, listen, to end, I'd like to ask, one challenge, encouragement, question, something just to leave everybody with.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to me, it's, how do you find that thing? Maybe it's like reading your Bible and praying. Maybe it's going outside for a walk. But like, what's the thing that brings you back to the center that, where you feel like I'm close to like the energy that is God. I'm not like thinking about God, but like I'm experiencing the real, the thing behind the thing, the true nature of the world, and that it's there, and then setting up practices to maintain access to that, to keep your inner world quiet, so that you can find that when you need it, which is often.
It's great.
Yeah.
Thanks for your time today. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.